Yes. It's your favorite crazy weekly morning show, the Wednesday Wake Up Live. We are a group of rapscallions. We just talk about national stuff that's going on, international stuff. We talk about local stuff, all the stuffs. That's what we're talking about. So many stuffs today to talk about. Alexa, stop. Today, at the beginning of all the stuffs, I'd like to thank Nick Baldwin for sharing this show out last week. We ended up having over 1,300 live views. Big thank you and shout out to Temecula Talk for putting up with us. We've been getting a lot of traction here locally. There's a lot going on. We had Menifee City Council tuning in last week. We had Temecula City Council tuning in the week before that. We're picking up a lot of momentum, and I want to thank you guys for that, for commenting live and continuing to share the show out. Trigger warning.
As usual.
We need to have a sound effect.
We need a red flashing light.
That makes it happen.
Sound guy, can you go ahead and make that happen?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next week, we're going to have a trigger warning sound effect for everybody. Everybody likes to throw around the term snowflakes. I like to identify as a snowflake.
I like snowflakes. I mean, I can ski on them. I can snowboard on them.
I used to wear a shirt that said, I'm unique, and it had a snowflake on it. I threw it out because I got fat.
David and I used to throw snowballs at cars when we were growing up.
Zachary Bach, stop it, you rebel. Let's talk about these things later. Okay, so I want to introduce you guys to the full morning cast this morning. We don't have any special guests this week, but we do have our local crew. So starting here is Amy Serpa. Good morning.
Good morning.
Zachary Bach.
Good morning.
Katie Serpa.
Good morning, everybody.
And I am David Serpa. I'm trying to get this guy to take my last name, but he won't do it. It's not going to happen. All right. So this week we've got a full show for you. I'm going to tell you what we're talking about right now. We're going to be talking about, first off, our nonprofit of the week, Lemon Ranch Rescue, and everything that they do. We try to showcase a nonprofit every week. Absolutely, sir. Andrew Yang dropped out of the race. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm bummed out. He said that it would be not a good thing for him to continue running because he knew that mathematically it was impossible for him to win. But the ideas that he threw out on the national stage are going to continue, and I think that's a good thing for everybody. Proposition 13 and the farce that were being sold in the state of California.
Both of the Proposition 13.
We're going to tell you about the old Proposition 13. Almost gave birth to revolution in the state of California, a word that we love. In fact, that's going to be the letter of the day, R, revolution. And then we're also going to talk about the coronavirus and what's going on with the cruise ship off the coast of Japan. Proposition 13, of course, like I said, and then Thomas Paine. I'm going to give you my top 20 favorite quotes by Thomas Paine, who is a man forgotten by American history, which is a tragedy. Not only was he forgotten by American history, he was forgotten by us while he was still alive. What a shame. Okay, you ready there, Katie Serpa? Let's start it off with the nonprofit of the week that way, because he normally goes down for a nap right in the middle of the show. Okay. So what is the nonprofit of the week this week?
The nonprofit this week.
Yep.
It
Give me this guy.
Lemon Ranch Rescue. They're local here in Temecula. They're a rescue that provides sanctuary to homeless and unwanted creatures. And they provide positive, life-affirming activities for individuals with troubled souls. They like to focus on building the relationships between the animal and the human, and they're also very involved in the abandonment and mistreatment of local farm animals and livestock. So they were founded in 2015, and the founder is Lee Frazier. So if you want to check them out, sounds like they do a lot of good stuff.
Where's Lemon Ranch Rescue located?
It's here in Temecula. I don't have an address.
Oh, it's here in Temecula?
Yes, local.
Okay, and then what sort of animals are they specifically involved in adopting? Does it say?
It didn't say. It just said creatures.
Creatures.
But it sounds like they do a little bit of everything, as long as it's, safe for them to try and keep them.
Lots of really cool things happen in Temecula in the nonprofit world, and I think that that's because we live in a society where we're very fortunate here for the most part, and so people have time to give back and to make sure that others aren't overlooked. And so we've got a really great group of nonprofits here in the area looking out for animals. And apparently Lemon Ranch Rescue is one of them.
Yeah, I'm always shocked when I go to do the research each week on these local nonprofits that are usually right here in Riverside County, and some of them very local here in Temecula and the surrounding areas. So there's always a lot of good stuff going on.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lemon Ranch Rescue. Very fun. And so next, let's talk about something that we brought up a couple of weeks ago that's not so fun. It's time to talk about the coronavirus. You guys ready for this?
This had me so triggered last night.
Kate was not just triggered last night. Kate was triggered this morning. She was talking about what should be done. I was like, Kate, you can't say that. That's not something that you should say. And it was just like, it was very, it was very wild. But I won't put her too far under the microscope here. But I will say that not enough is being done. There is some scary things that are happening. And one of those things, Kate, you want to tell everybody what's happening with your friend Carrie? It was recently on CNN, by the way.
Yes. So my friend Carrie Maniscalco and her husband Roger are on that cruise ship under quarantine right now. She's a realtor out in Utah and a good friend of mine. I've known her for a very long time, and they're stuck there. And she also is having some other medical things going on that she's not able to get treatment for, because they told her that if she left the ship to seek treatment from a physician in a hospital, that not only would her quarantine time start over, but that she would be separated from her husband indefinitely. I mean, for the duration of the quarantine.
And meanwhile, what's going on here? And Carrie went on a cruise, on a cruise liner, and they ended up having a coronavirus outbreak on the ship.
Yeah.
Now that's one of the most terrifying things that I think anybody could think of. She's in a situation where she's not around the rest of her family. The rest of her family stateside, but her and her husband are there on this cruise ship, and there are things that are circulating through the vents, and she's constantly posting. And you could follow her online, Carrie Maniscalco. She's constantly posting all of these things that are happening. She's like 31 new outbreaks this morning, 20 new outbreaks today. And I'm looking at this and I'm wondering how many people are on the ship. How are they being fed? And it seems like it would be absolutely the most terrifying thing that you could possibly imagine.
Well, food is being delivered to their doors, but by the staff who have been exposed to, the other people on the ship that are already sick, or they have been serving them up until the point where they started to have the outbreak. There's a lot of elderly people on that ship. There's, I think, at least 24 Americans that are
I want to take a moment really quick to thank one of our top fans, Zachary Bach, who has recently been recognized as a top fan. Thank you so much for tuning in and continuing to comment on the Wednesday Wake Up Live. Your viewership means so much to us. Back to the coronavirus here.
Well, I was so triggered last night. And I mean, I was triggered because, and I won't get as heated as I was.
Oh, please do.
That I was so triggered because I don't really understand why the common denominator with whoever is making the decisions to keep everybody on the ship, why are we keeping I think there's over 3,000 people, including staff. Over
3,000 people on a ship while the virus is exploding.
Are we keeping all of these people, most of which still at this point who are not infected, circulating the same exact air and keeping everybody on this ship?
I want to bring this a little bit more home here for you guys. What's happening right now is this footage is being circulated, this drone footage of Japan, and you guys saw it. I shared it on my Facebook page. I think maybe we'll share it in the comments here for you guys to watch after the show. But it looks like the zombie apocalypse.
Yes, it reminded me of I Am Legend, the movie with Will Smith, where it's just this city that is just empty basically, and it was very eerie.
Yeah, it was pretty terrifying. I think for those of you that were looking, if you contrast this with how this city normally looks, it's normally gridlocked. There's people everywhere, and it looks like there is no one. And then the original whistleblower for the coronavirus died.
I was reading an article about the doctor that kind of the same thing, that the doctor that identified the SARS virus, he's been on lockdown for years. The government over there just will not let him out of his house. He can't talk to his family, and they essentially locked him down.
It's wild, the things that are happening. It's wild, and it's terrifying because, of course, and this is what we talked about a few weeks ago on the show, was that the coronavirus landed at March Air Force Base. I feel like the American government did a pretty damn good job making sure that that wasn't something that exploded. But there are cases now where people are being released because they're not being diagnosed properly.
So I read on that. What happened is essentially they had 4 people that flew into Miramar, because now it's at their Miramar, there are March, and a few other Air Force bases and Navy bases. And essentially they sent 4 people down to the hospital in San Diego to get tested. They sent their samples out to Atlanta to get them verified. Somehow the samples got mislabeled. Atlanta didn't even test them, said, no, these people tested negative. And so then those people got released to go back and start gathering their stuff. Well, then all of a sudden they went, uh-oh, we messed up. They called them. Thankfully, 3 of the people were just already basically still in quarantine at the hospital. One of them was not, but she was basically in a hotel room.
Hey, come back. You got coronavirus.
Hey, sit tight. So they're still trying to see if she went anywhere.
Okay, so I don't want to go too off on coronavirus. I think it's something that we talked about a few weeks ago. It is continuing to be an issue. Kate was very passionate about it this morning. She's gone off on nap duty. I'm very passionate, and I think we're all very passionate about something that's very interesting. Andrew Yang has dropped out of the race, which is, in my opinion, very unfortunate. And not necessarily because I'm not one of those people who is adamantly Republican, adamantly Democrat. I consider myself a centrist. And I think that Andrew Yang brought something to the debate that no one was talking about in automation and what that's doing to the American economy, which I think that we should discuss here, and in UBI. Now, automation is something that specifically for real estate agents, when automation hits real estate, and that's what everybody, well, what happens when this, when that? It's already happening in a lot of ways. You're already being worked out. And so are you being complicit in this? And so Andrew Yang dropped out. Zach, what are your thoughts?
I'm fine with it. He wasn't a real contender. He had some great ideas, but
yeah.
I mean, his freedom dividend was the biggest thing that he was pushing for, and that's really what got him into the talk. But that freedom dividend was going to cost the American taxpayers $2.7 trillion a year. Mm-hmm. Our national taxes is, whatever I posted last night, $3.6 trillion. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I mean, it doesn't leave a whole lot left over mm-hmm. for us to fund schools and fund all this other stuff. And there's an argument to say, well, if everybody has $1,000, they're going to spend more money. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, maybe, but are they going to spend it correctly? Or is it truly going to boost the economy? So I don't, you know, Andrew Yang, yes, he had some great points, mm-hmm. but I think that overall his programs were going to be outrageously expensive and weren't going to truly contribute to America's economy going up.
Did you read Andrew Yang's book, The War on Normal People?
No, but I've watched all the debates. So I have watched all the Democratic debates. I've heard all the arguments that they put forward, and I have looked into the candidates.
Okay. So in Andrew Yang's book, he addressed many of the points that you brought up to actually be complete and total fallacies. And one of those is that, you know, people are going to stop spending money and that they're going to stop working and these different things. But Andrew Yang also, you said it's going to cost the American taxpayer trillions of dollars. But if you read Andrew Yang's book, he outlined the people that will be paying for it, the corporations that will be paying for it, are currently hiding under that tax blanket of not being taxed at all. And one of those people that you love very much and that I love as an innovator of industry, who's very good at not paying taxes, is Jeff Bezos. Mm-hmm. And Jeff Bezos paid no taxes whatsoever for Amazon. And not only, in addition to that, received, I think, $127 million benefit from the people, right? That's the people's money mm-hmm. that went to Amazon. And so I look at things like that and I'm like, but are we really practicing these trickle-down economics, or are we creating blankets for people to cheat the system who know how to cheat the system, or to benefit from the system correctly because they have all of the benefits?
So I was speaking with somebody yesterday that started a home business on Amazon, selling a product on Amazon mm-hmm. that nobody else was selling. Mm-hmm. And in his first month, he's sold $30,000 worth of product. Mm-hmm. So he himself has made $14,000-ish in his first month. Mm-hmm. Will he pay taxes? Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe Jeff Bezos didn't pay taxes, mm-hmm. but all of these entrepreneurs who are using his platform are paying taxes. All of the delivery drivers.
And for every guy that is making that product, he will soon be in a situation where through the world economy, somebody is against him making probably a similar product to what he's making, but can undermine him and then have it there the next day through Amazon Prime.
Well, he's using Amazon.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know, but so are Uber drivers. Well, I know. Are driving for Uber. Does that mean that the company has their best interest at heart?
Well, no, but this is my point is Jeff Bezos created a product. He created Amazon, mm-hmm. which has allowed hundreds of thousands of people to now gain employment. and those people are paying taxes. So if he's not paying taxes, I'm totally fine with it, because these hundreds of thousands of people and all of these businesses and all this other part are paying taxes through his company, through what he created.
But he personally, it's not even that he personally, it's that Amazon.
It's Amazon.
Is not paying
So
taxes.
he is paying taxes.
And so Amazon's not paying taxes. And so the thing is that when you look at these things, you say, oh, well, it's good for the regular entrepreneur because now they could sell their home trinkets and make a living. Well, the most people that are selling their home trinkets and that are trying to make it into a bigger thing are making less than $400 a month. They're subsidizing their lack of employment by selling these things in order to gain, a better opportunity. But what's happening is, more often than not, like how Uber is going to launch this platform to make it so that all these people don't have a job, Amazon is creating this platform and other people are benefiting off of it, who will eventually be replaced by Amazon. So Amazon is also getting involved in groceries. Amazon is also, they bought Whole Foods, correct. So like when you look at Amazon, it's becoming this massive entity. Yeah. And what's happening is Amazon is benefiting off of automation, but they're also benefiting off of the benefit that people created this world, this economy. So Jeff Bezos, if you took Jeff Bezos and you took your average person that would be receiving universal basic income, any one of us, and you put us both on an island, well, we'd have more or less the same opportunities. And Jeff Bezos did have the same opportunities as everybody else, but he seized them.
Yep. And
he is the unicorn that we all point to and uphold as the one that it's all possible because Jeff, with his mind, has started buying up Whole Foods. He started buying into shipping, Amazon Prime. He started getting into television and the creation of product. I mean, he's a genius.
He hasn't done anything that billionaires haven't done over and over. Look at Rockefeller. Look at Carnegie. Those guys, they bought their entire industry, to where they owned everything and all the things around their industry. So what he's doing is nothing new.
So what will happen is, and the UBI and automation, I feel like it's a conversation, and this is the IQ level for this show is very high, and I appreciate the people that are watching right now. Right now, through automation, through companies like, and I think that sticking with the Amazon thing, I think is very important. Because Jeff Bezos, Whole Foods, he can get into shipping now. What happens when Tesla starts launching trucking vehicles that are unmanned and kills the trucking industry, and which is the number one state in number one source of employment in 29 states. And then, go ahead.
I was going to say, getting back to Yang, I think that it's so important to understand what revolutionary ideas this man carried with him. And part of this is what we are talking about, is that we are entering this AI stage where, we are utilizing tech, and this is a tech genius, that we had at our forefront who brought a lot of really amazing ideas, and I think that universal basic income is something that wasn't being discussed before Yang came. And so I think a lot of his ideas are something that are new, which typically scare people. And it's like, whoa, hang on. I can't even grasp that, and so it typically scares them instead of jumping into that conversation of how can this benefit us.
Absolutely. And normally we take the people that bring us these ideas and we get rid of them.
Yeah.
We get rid of them because we're not ready for it. What are you going to say, Zach?
I was just going to say, it's just an interesting conversation that we're having, because you and I have conversations all the time about the government and being reliant on the government. And we're essentially saying, the government is going to give everybody $1,000 a month, is what he was saying, which is going to make people 100% dependent on that $1,000 check, just like a lot of veterans get dependent on that VA disability check, and it limits them from actually moving forward in life.
So what's happened is we've developed a shadow class in California, because there are already a bunch of people that are on these systems, that are on unemployment, that are on disability, that are otherwise living check to check. And what's happened is, we've expanded these systems by spending more and more money on the systems and less on the people.
Yes.
And so we say, oh, well, we're spending $40,000 per person on this program, instead of handing these people $1,000 a month and then letting them decide how they want to spend that money. And they're actually implementing this right now in Stockton, which you and I we grew up close to Stockton. And they're implementing a UBI program that is 100% funded off of philanthropy. And they've assigned it to, I think, 150 random residents at $500 a month. And what they found is that people are overwhelmingly spending this $500 a month on groceries.
Exactly.
Followed closely by utilities. That none of them have stopped working. that all of them have continued to keep their jobs, and that less than 1% of the money that was handed out was spent on drugs or alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many of us that are on the brink of being homeless or that are homeless and going without eating or struggling to feed our families, that I truly believe that if we had this kind of base established income, it would benefit our families at the core, and then we are spending that money in our local communities. You know?
So I will tell you this, and this is one of the most heady books that I've read, and I've pounded it out. This is in probably every page has something that's underlined in it. And I was adamantly anti-universal basic income before I started reading this. And then I think that, I don't know if now's the time. I don't know when it's going to happen, but what's going to happen is we're going to have a certain amount of people that have been completely automated out of retail, of restaurants, the restaurant industry, of trucking, not to mention all the places that truckers like to stop and eat. You know what I mean?
That's right.
30% of malls they think they're going to close in the next 5 years. What is the average American, the average Californian going to do for work? And so what are people going to do in a post-work economy? And that's some of the things that he addresses here in this book. Again, like I said, adamantly anti-UBI. And then I read this book, and it has at least opened my eyes to the thought of it. And Thomas Paine, the writer of Common Sense, who was instrumental in helping this country become this country, and then to help the French Revolution get kicked off and running, was pro-UBI. And what happens is when you get a certain amount of the people who have been forced into situations through practices like redlining, historically, government has denied certain people opportunities. Other people have rise to the top, and I respect them a great deal for that. I think that's great. But what we've done is we've denied certain people income. We've denied certain people the possibility for generating wealth for themselves. We've kept them in a box. And then we've ended up in a situation where a certain member of families, about 4 families in California, own a lion's share of the wealth and the power and the opportunities. Then you have a certain class that is no longer working. And this is when it gets dangerous for California. And this is what I'm going to tell you right now. And this is where your anti-UBI stance might come into question here in about 5 years. When the trucking industry has gone, when retail is gone in the way that we know it, when your average food service worker is no longer your high school teenager that's earning income on the average weekend, but an adult that's working 3 jobs in order to break even, the minimum wage cannot support anyone. You're going to end up in a situation where you have a lion's share of people that are unable to provide for themselves, because that's just a fact. And when that happens, typically revolution boils through. And Andrew Yang talks about revolution several times in his book. He talks about how him and his college-educated friends from the Ivy League often talk about having a place to run when things go south. Well, what's going to happen is when we have a certain number of people who cannot work, who cannot provide for themselves, and you've got government with wasteful spending massively and regularly, you're going to end up with a group of people that cannot afford to leave and cannot afford to stay.
Oh, look at LA.
So
You know.
let me ask you
Which
this.
Proposition 13 is going to be instrumental in that.
Yeah. So if we were to take that $1,000 a month and we said, okay, well, how about this? We just cut taxes to the tune of $1,000 a month, where people are now, their paychecks are simply bigger for the jobs that they are working.
Yeah, you ready? You ready for this?
Go for it.
Okay. So first off, the tax system is broken.
100%.
Okay. So I'm not saying that we tax people more in order to spend more elsewhere. What I'm saying is, instead of pumping blood into a corpse, which is the current California system, we fix the system and allow blood to circulate throughout it. And if blood does not circulate, the system dies.
See, and I 100% see that if something like that was implemented, taxes would immediately go up.
I disagree with you. And Andrew Yang, again, outlines this in the book, that what you do is you take these companies that are currently not paying any taxes, you tie taxes to productivity, which I know that you're very anti, but if you're doing very good, then you should be able to pay a little bit more taxes. And as someone who's done very good in the past, I would not begrudge that. I would not hate it if I knew that the money was being spent properly. What's happened is the money is not being spent properly. It has been spent to control the people, not to free them up. Because you have to partner something like UBI with something that's going to radically increase job production. And one of those things would be to do away with job permit, or not job permits, but permits for starting a new business. Because what's going to happen is if you give people $1,000 a month, what's going to happen is people are going to start companies again. Right. Overwhelmingly, our generation is the first generation since the Depression to not start businesses from 18 to 34.
Mm-hmm. See, I see what you're saying, but there's one big, huge factor of this for your mindset is you are not most CEOs. Most CEOs, most business leaders, they want stuff. They want money. And what we will see is a mass exodus from California. Like we've already seen where I've talked to plenty of business owners where they've said, if they continue to raise the taxes on my corporation, like Prop 13, which we'll get to, I am packing my business up and I am leaving.
So people are already leaving California. And I think that what we need to do is, because we have more billionaires than any other state. By a lot. Yeah. We have, I think, over 150 billionaires in this state. That's insane.
Yeah.
And so if they left this state, oh no. Oh my God. What's going to happen? We're going to return to a local economy. Okay. If the dollar crashes because they leave and they take their dollars with them, the dollar is practically garbage at this point. And so some sort of new currency might need to be developed. But the thing is I think overwhelmingly, you have to understand that most of these billionaire corporations are headed by people that are overwhelmingly liberal. So you've got these Bill and Melinda Gates with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And what they're doing is they're talking to other people in Hollywood and throughout the world. And they're talking about how much wealth can we give back? And I think that what's happened is in California, we have a completely broken system that where a lot of people have a great deal of wealth. And they live about 1.5 miles from people that have no wealth whatsoever and no ability to create a situation to where they can get out of it.
I'm not talking about billionaires. I'm talking about millionaires. I'm talking about people making $1 to $10 million a year that are running these, well, I'll use Stater Brothers as an example. Yeah. Stater Brothers is a local Southern California chain of, when it was started by a couple of veterans, and they opened two, and then 4, and then 20. And I think those are the businesses that we'll see lead, because if those people are going, why am I working this hard to start 6, 7, 8 shops of whatever, those are the companies that we're going to see pull out and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to continue to pay 40, 50, 60, 70% of my income to the state of California for them to give thousands of dollars to people that,
So I will say that, so first off, I'm not talking about your normal corporation is like anyone making over $80,000. And those are the people who are the lifeblood of the California economy. Right now, that's the number one employer in the state of California is still the small business owner, who most people refer to as a corporation. I'm not talking about those people. I am talking about, but no, Andrew Yang is not. And this is where it truly, Zach, I challenge everyone to read this book, because we have to reevaluate the way that we're thinking about this. Because we have to reevaluate what is real wealth, what is extravagant wealth. And what's happened is there is this certain billionaire lifestyle that we see everywhere that has set up a family in perpetuity, indefinitely, forever. And what's going to happen is we're going to get to a certain point to where there's no longer opportunities for people. And it's not that far out. I'm talking 5 to 10 years. We're in a situation in California where, because the wealth is continuously going like this, with the gap ever widening between the people who have a ton of money and the people who have none. None. Destitute. And right now, the study is that a $400 unexpected bill would devastate most of American households. $400 is, and you and I both know that a lot of people in our generation are still heavily dependent on their parents. Yeah. Well, what happens if your parents never had the kind of opportunities? They weren't allowed those sort of opportunities. So, Kate, we've been talking about Andrew Yang.
Oh, good stuff.
Maybe I should give you final thoughts here before we move on to Proposition 13. It really, as an intellectual, it bums me out that he dropped out. As somebody that I would love to see Andrew Yang and President Trump debate, because I think it would be good for all of us. His slogan was "Make America Think Hard." Make America think harder. Okay, Kate, what is your final words here with Andrew Yang before we move on?
I'm really bummed to see him drop out. I'm like 95% of the way through this book. I really am going to finish up the last bit of today, but man, it's almost sobering, you know, like it's just such an eye-opening book, and it really makes me think about our generation, specifically the millennials, what we're experiencing, and then like how do we properly prepare our kids for what is coming? You know, now that we know this information. That's what I found so interesting about, like, he just kind of stopped, you know, where he was at. He's like, now we just kind of have to address the problem, because it's not like it's coming anymore. It's already here. Yeah.
And that's the truth. It is here. We are in a situation. I want to visit here your guys' comments. We have some people that are tuning in here. Benito Sanchez, who ironically, Benito Sanchez, most CEOs would leave California and go to Florida. I disagree with you. I think people overwhelmingly want to stay in California. I think that there's a California pride that most other places don't have, except for Texas. I feel like people are laughing about California right now when that was not the case a few years ago. I love this state. I think a lot of people agree with me. And you have a lot of CEOs, a lot of founders of companies that are adamantly pro UBI, that know that at some point or another it's going to happen. And one of them is the founder of Facebook. So he gives an entire breakdown of all the people, all the big brains that are talking about UBI that made me raise my eyebrows. But
you know what scared me half to death yesterday?
Yep.
Was that so the disability rates are obviously through the roof, and disability is now kind of merged with the Social Security funds, and all of that they predict is going to run out around 2034. And then what? You know, the staggering rates of individuals that now are claiming mood disorders and connective tissue issues, which are the two number one reasons that people are applying for disability and receiving disability. 2034, like that's not that far away.
Andrew Yang refers to that as the shadow class.
Yeah,
so there's a couple of things. Class. Thomas Paine, 1796, out of a collected fund from landowners, there shall be paid to every person when arrived at the age of 21 years, the sum of 15 pounds sterling as a compensation in part for the loss of his or her natural inheritance to every person, rich or poor. Martin Luther King Jr. has a quote in here. Richard Nixon, Milton Friedman, Bernie Sanders, of course, Stephen Hawking, President Barack Obama, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. A problem of excess automation forces us to look at the individuals affected and take those extra resources and make sure they're directed to them in terms of re-education and income policies. Elon Musk. I think we'll end up doing universal basic income. It's going to be necessary. There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. I want to be clear. These are not things I wish will happen. These are things I think probably will happen. And one of those things is, it's not just going to be factory workers. It's going to be doctors. It's going to be people that AI is just better. Mark Zuckerberg. We should explore universal basic income so everyone has a cushion to try new ideas. And it goes on and on and on. So, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
Oh, no, I just had one quick thought. When you said doctors, you know, they were saying doctors and psychologists, studies are showing that people are, especially veterans with PTSD who are experiencing PTSD, are more comfortable speaking with a robot than they are speaking with a human being and opening up. Isn't that interesting?
So another one of the things here is, I want to bring it back to the comments. Holly says, oh, and Newsom bragging about billions in surplus. So it's very interesting. Yeah. Because you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? So Gavin Newsom has gone around everywhere. He was on The View recently, and he's talking about how California has, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I have it written down, $127 million surplus or something like that. And he's talking about all of the billion, excuse me. And he's talking about all of the things that California, we're the 5th largest economy in the world. Well, if we are the 5th largest economy of the world, are we really taking care of our destitute? Are we really doing right by them? And so I would challenge Governor Newsom to lead us. I understand that you're a radical, and I understand that you're representing San Francisco. Lead all of us. We need a radical. And I'm being dead honest, not just your tribe. He says there's a $21 billion operating surplus. California is responsible for 1 out of every 7 jobs created. He has tied up 67 lawsuits with President Trump's administration and has an astronomical success rate. I think that it might be time to start talking and stop suing each other. In addition to that, he made it very vocal stance about how even though the state of California voted on the death penalty, voted on expediting the death penalty, he would not sign a single whatever, putting somebody to death. And so he's again and again said, I don't care what you say, even if you vote. And that's what all of the California representatives have said. We don't care what you say. Even if you vote, we are going to do what we want to do anyway, just like with Proposition 13. So I say no taxation without representation. I say it's time that we start getting a little bit more radical. If our voices are not going to be heard here in California, maybe it's time we stop paying taxes.
Just reading something that it's interesting. California, the local governments in California, to include the state government and local governments, have a debt of $1.3 trillion. So it's interesting that Gavin Newsom is sitting here going, "Oh, we have a surplus, and then you have these propositions wanting to raise taxes and do bonds, but yet we still have a debt in California that hasn't been repaid."
There's this thought in old school economics, and I understand some of it, that debt is a good thing. And even Thomas Paine talks about that. How a certain amount of debt sets you up with your allies. But I feel like we should be more in a situation where, as Americans, our debt should be tied from maybe one state to another. You know what I mean? Versus foreign governments, versus maybe the federal government. Mm-hmm. I feel like we need to get to a situation where, as California, we need to return to federalism, and we need to embrace a California first mindset. And understand that if people want to keep hating California, they don't have to eat our produce. They don't have to take any of our exports. They don't have to benefit off of our taxpayers. There will come a point in California where we're going to have to start looking at these things. We're going to have to decide, who are we pro? Are we pro-Californian? Or are we pro the rest of the country that's continuing to soak up our resources while collecting government resources? And I think that there will come a time where we're going to have to look at that. We're going to have to reevaluate that on a federal and local level.
Yeah. One thing that I found interesting is you look at the Middle East and you look at how much it costs for a gallon of gas for your car in the Middle East, right? They're not paying anything.
Sure.
And then you look at, Trump came out and he said, well, we're the #1 producer of oil in the world now. Mm-hmm. Awesome. But why is gas still so expensive across the United States?
There you go, my brother. There you go.
It's insane to me that the Middle East is paying, a cent a gallon, 5 cents a gallon, whatever. I'm paying $4 a gallon.
And we're the #1 producer.
We're the #1 producer. Something doesn't add up.
Okay. And that's where I really want you to read New Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Because what's happened is our oil companies don't have our best interest in mind. There's a reason why we freed up our interest in foreign oil. And now we have national oil that we're consuming overwhelmingly. Mm-hmm. But our dollar continues to pay $4.50 a gallon for it. What is happening here? What's happening is these large corporations, through the corporatocracy, through government, are being able to do whatever they want to do. And that's what happens when the corporate world is left completely unchecked.
You also have well over, it's like $1.75 in taxes alone.
On
every gallon of gas.
And that's why we need to stop taxing the crap out of everything. So that's why, again, UBI, all these different things. No new taxes. No new taxes. Let's spend the money that we have coming in. Let's audit California. Let's figure out where all that money is going. Because that bridge to nowhere, a lot of money got spent there. That bullet train that we all stupidly voted for, that money went somewhere.
You know what's interesting about the bullet train? I'm actually totally pro the bullet train, but that's because I lived in Europe and I saw how easy it was to travel around Europe. I saw how convenient it was to travel around Europe.
But this government, not right now. You know what I mean? Disney at one point offered to pay for a rail line, a privatized system.
Thank you, General Motors.
And then donate it back to the state of California.
Yep.
Disney was going to build a rail system tying the Southern California to the Bay Area. And the state of California did not want to do it because why is that, Buck?
GM.
Student of history.
Car manufacturers.
General Motors.
Where it was going to happen. If we want a bullet train, privatize it. If you as a Elon Musk want to build a bullet train, go for it. But the state is not going to pay for it.
Well, if we get to a point where our economy is booming, where we need it, and we really are operating on a surplus, a genuine surplus. And by the poor being taken care of, our prisons are not full of people, our countrymen are okay, then let's talk about a freaking bullet train, okay? All right, Sam, Stoyalaskovich. I tried. I'm not making fun of your last name. I really want to respect people here on the show.
I don't remember how to say it, Sam.
So Sam, Yang was ahead of his time. Laugh out loud. And I'm on board with his message. It's unfortunate, but the way he put it was either he was going to make it to the presidency, or a lot of people are going to start sounding like him. He succeeded in that. Either way, hopefully he runs again. I agree with you, my brother. He changed the dynamic. He changed the conversation. We are talking about automation now. We weren't talking about automation before. We were talking about UBI now. There weren't a lot of people talking about UBI before, other than the mayor of Stockton, who I'm a huge fan of. I think he's doing really interesting things, and he's really putting his money where his mouth is. I think that we have to, if we are going to be these things as a state, let's be these things, but let's be representative of all people here. Michelle Rios says, hi guys. Good morning, Michelle. And we got Glenn Twiddle tuning back in from the other side of the world to say, good day, Serpas. Good day, Glenn Twiddle. I made a kangaroo yesterday in my kids' art class. I was thinking about you, handsome. Great way to wake up at 4 a.m. with you guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. Shall we move to Proposition 13?
Yeah.
Certainly. Why not?
Okay.
More taxes.
More taxes. But more importantly than more taxes, you guys, I think that it's important to understand history, which is something that we hate. We hate history. We don't want to look at what happens in this world and think that it has real implications. And so what happened was, should I tell the history of California and Proposition 13? Or
well, I think we should clarify that there are two Proposition 13 things going on. And
yeah,
it's
I didn't know
leading
that.
to mass confusion. And so you have I just got my ballot in the mail, and there it says Proposition 13. Now on that, and I've gotten into some Facebook debates with people because they don't realize there's a difference. The one that is on the ballot right now is a $15 million bond that, once repaid with interest, will cost California taxpayers about $27 billion. It feels weird saying billion,
15 million to 27 billion. I'm not an economist, but that sounds like not a good deal,
right? And so 750 billion or million a year will go directly into that, and it's supposed to go to our schools. But here's the thing: we just gave the schools a $9 billion bond. Where did that money go? And so you have that Prop 13 that is currently on the ballot as a bond. Of course, how do bonds get repaid? Out of the general fund. Where do our taxes go? Into the general fund. Eventually, so on and so forth. Now, the other Proposition 13 is our property taxes. Now, this was put into place a long time ago, and essentially what they're wanting to do is revoke some of the commercial protections under Proposition 13, which will cause commercial property taxes to go up, not residential. And they've made that very clear. We're not going after residential, but a lot of people believe that it's a slippery slope. They think that we are going to eventually, in a few years, they're going to say, hey, well, we did commercial. Let's just raise residential just a little bit. Let's raise it just a little bit. Now, they're going to tout it as, oh, we're trying to protect the schools, because most states do fund their schools through property taxes. California does not. Most of our school funding actually comes from income tax. And a vast majority of that is paid by the wealthiest individuals in California. So.
And yet look at our schools, and yet look at the teachers union, and look at the $27 million that they spent to block charters. But that's a debate for another show. So it's a little bit disappointing where we've gotten with Proposition 13. But I can tell you, so I'm adamantly no new taxes. Stop putting firefighters on everything. Stop putting veterans on everything. Stop putting our children on everything. Stop putting the police department on everything and teachers on everything, and then trying to sell it to us like you give a crap about any of them. Damn you, state legislator. I'm really frustrated, because what they did with the recent Proposition 13 was they decided that they were not going to put the term taxes in the bill whatsoever. And so it looks as if it's just going to be paid with magic money. Now, what's happened is we're getting loaned a whole bunch of money that we're paying for in the future, that our children are paying for in the future. So either we are going to have this freaking thing now, this revolution now, where we start holding California accountable, or we're going to pass the buck to our kids. And that's not something that I'm excited about. So this Proposition 13, the way that it happened historically, and this is what I want to get into here. There was a time where they wanted to say that the amount of taxes could not exceed a percentage of the home value. It was 1%, I believe, at the time. And California decided, we're going to do whatever we want to do anyway. Well, the people spoke up, and what ended up happening was California saw a Republican governor because of it, Ronald Reagan. California ended up seeing almost a revolution because of it, because the thing is that we need to understand about property taxes is that it affects those who don't have a malleable income the most. It affects senior citizens and it affects renters. That's what happens. And so with the amount that we're paying the highest property taxes of any state in the country, currently, we have the highest income tax with the most loopholes of any state in the country. Isn't that interesting? We have the highest income tax, but we also have the most tax loopholes of any state.
Well, when you have a bunch of people making the rules who are in that high tax bracket, of course they're going to
That's
figure
what
out
I'm
a way to make
saying,
sure that
my
they can
brother.
get out of it.
We have a very bureaucratic system. And so what happened was Proposition 13 was overwhelmingly shot down. California showed up. Now, I'm not a Republican because I don't like to control everybody. And I'm not a Democrat because I don't like to control everybody. But what happened was there was kind of a Republican revolution. Everything turned red in California. Reagan ended up becoming the president. And so it's a very disappointing thing that we're continuing to go down this path again, because unfortunately, Americans, Californians have a short attention span. And so we are doomed to revisit a lot of the elements in history, which were not good to the government, which were not good to the people, and ended up in the people mobilizing.
It's very interesting that it seems like California, we talk all the time about California being a revolutionary state. People went west. They decided to go to California, and you have a very red state full of entrepreneurs, full of people wanting gold, people setting up businesses. And then it started to shift, and the mindset shifted. And then now you have a lot of people that are needing government support, that are needing help. And now it's almost like the government is saying, well, let's raise these taxes back up. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
What's happened in California is that we've become predatory towards new mines. Not mines backed with money, which is what a lot of them comes out of Silicon Valley, but we've become predatory towards new, young, innovative mines. And so there's no real opportunity for them to start up and start their own business. And so we turn employees into everyone, which is why we did away with the gig economy, which is why we're going after contractors. We want everyone to be an employee. But why do you want everyone to be an employee?
So they're paying taxes.
It's another bureaucratic system that we love. We love our bureaucracies here in this country. Okay, Kate, go ahead.
No, I was just say, where the heck is the checks and balances on all this stuff? Obviously we're voting these people into, we're voting. We have to educate ourselves. Like, we have to start educating ourselves. Or are there just not enough options? Are we just like a lot of people in our generation, just not voting?
Yeah, well, and that's what's happened too, is you have a group of people, and people are constantly talking about the popular vote, the electoral college. And we've gotten to a situation where there's a lot of people that when they're in a blue state, they don't show up to vote if they're a Republican. If they're in a red state, they don't show up to vote if they're a Democrat. So most of us are in a situation where most people, and that's the truth, more than 50% of people, there's not a single state out there that has more than 50% of the people showing up to vote.
Yeah.
Because most of us, our voices don't matter, and we know that.
Well, that's, like I got my ballot in the mail yesterday, and I opened it, and I felt this optimism. And then my next thought was, but they're going to do what they want anyways, regardless of what I put on this.
That's right. They're going to do what they want to do anyways. Oh, the cat got stepped on. Kate is okay. Everyone's still alive. The cat's all right. So I'm going to wrap this up with California, and I'm just going to say that California, what you need to do is you need to understand that there's a great deal of the state. The coast is overwhelmingly blue. The rest of the state is overwhelmingly red for the most part. And I am somebody that I'm a human. I'm a human being. I believe in common sense politics. I would consider myself a Democratic Republican, which is what most of us were at the beginning of this whole great experiment. I believe that what we need to do is we need to open the lines of communication and stop suing each other, stop being ridiculous, stop participating in the farce, because more and more of us, we don't want to participate in it.
Yeah.
We're abstaining.
Suing each other is a big part. That brings us back to our conversation last week. Businesses being so afraid of everything that they ban people and they do this and that because they're so afraid of a lawsuit. Okay, I'm going to go into my Thomas Paine bit here. My favorite quotes here for you guys. And I'm going to try to do it without crying. I really love Thomas Paine. What we did to him as a country is devastating. He unified us in a time when we needed to be unified. We needed to be unified by common sense. We needed to return to it as a country. And right now, I think we need to return to it as a state desperately. I think that as Californians, like in New York, we set the pace for the rest of the country. And a lot of people refuse to believe it. But what happens is when you have the term conservative, you're trying to conserve something. You're trying to hold on to it. The term progressive, you're moving forward. And these things do not need to be at odds with one another. What we need to do is we need to be here in the presence. We need to understand that there are people that are suffering now. Some of them are business owners. Some of them could never hope to become business owners. I walked into a McDonald's this week. I've lost my wallet. I had a $100 bill. I didn't want to go through the drive-through. And so I walked in, and there was a lady that was in front of me that was in nurse's scrubs. And she had change in her hand. And she said, I've lost my wallet. I don't know if she lost her wallet or not. But she started to pay for her meal and change. And then she was talking, and then we ended up striking up a conversation. And she was going to visit her daughter's school at lunch. She was bringing her daughter lunch. At the end, she had enough change to buy herself a sundae. She's clearly embarrassed. She says that she's working 2 jobs, and this is the way that she's able to see her daughter between her jobs. Okay? That is the economy that we're living in right now. That is the economy that we're living in.
Yeah.
Most minimum wage jobs do not offer full-time employment because they don't want to offer full-time benefits. And so you end up with most people operating between 16 and 30 hours that are inconsistent every week, trying to balance 2 jobs to make it happen. I've seen it. My mother lived it. I lived it along with her. I want to give you my top 20 quotes. Thomas Paine has aged better than anyone else out there because he was the one that was dedicated to the truth. A lot of us look back at history and we think, oh, there were slave owners that were running this country. Thomas Paine was about the rights of every man and woman from the beginning. He went off after fighting in this revolution to fight in the French Revolution. He ended up being in prison for 11 months, and George Washington himself would not write a letter on his behalf. He said, I will not engage in international politics. Thomas Paine came back to America after 15 years because Thomas Jefferson secured him safe passage and was denied the right to vote. The people hated him. The people hated him. He had 6 people that were at his funeral. Breaks my heart. So here we go. Are you ready? These are my Thomas Paine quotes that still drive me to this day. I will try to read them without crying all over myself. Thomas Paine, I am thus a Quaker, that I would gladly agree with all the world to lay aside the use of arms and settle matters by negotiation. But unless the whole will, the matter ends, and I must take up my musket and thank heaven that he has put it in my power. If there must be trouble, let it be in my day, that my child may know peace. I offer nothing more simple than simple facts, plain arguments, and common sense. Government, even at its best state, is but a necessary evil, and in its worst state, an intolerable one. For all men, being originally equals, no one by birth could have a right to set up his own family in perpetual preference to all others forever. And though himself might deserve some decent degree of honors of his contemporaries, yet his descendants might be far too unworthy to inherit them. It's one of my favorites. The mind, once enlightened, cannot again become dark. This new world hath been the asylum for the persecuted lovers of civil and religious liberty from every part of Europe. Hither they have fled, not from the tender embraces of mother, but from the cruelty of the monster. Whatever is my right as a man is also the right of another, and it becomes my duty to guarantee as well as to possess. Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it. We have it in our power to begin the world over again. A long habit, like in California, a long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of it being right and raises at first a formidable outcry in the defense of custom. But the tumult soon subsides. Time makes more converts than reason. Much hath been said on the united strength of Britain and the colonies, that in conjunction they might beg defiance to the world. But this is mere presumption. The fate of war is uncertain. Neither do the expression mean anything, for this continent would never suffer itself to be drained of the inhabitants to support British armies in either Asia, Africa, or Europe. Besides, what have we to do with setting the world at defiance? Our plan is commerce, and that, well attended to, will secure us the peace and friendship of all Europe, because it is the interest of all Europe to have America as a free port. Her trade will always be a protection, and her barrenness of gold and silver secure her from invaders. I think California could become a port of free trade. I would love that. He that would make his own liberty secure must guard even his enemy from oppression. For if he violates this duty, he establishes a precedent that will reach to himself. When it can be said by any country in the world, my poor are happy, neither ignorance nor distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars, the aged are not in want, the taxes are not oppressive. The rational world is my friend because I am the friend of happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast its constitution and government. Independence is my happiness, the world is my country, and my religion is to do good. I have always strenuously supported the right of every man to his own opinion, however different that opinion might be to mine. He who denies to another his right makes a slave of himself to his present opinion, because he precludes himself the right of changing it. Let them call me a rebel, and welcome. I feel no concern from it. But should I suffer the misery of devils, were I to make my whore of my soul, to make a whore of my soul. Read that one again. Let them call me a rebel, and welcome. I feel no concern from it. But should I suffer the misery of devils, were I to make a whore of my soul? But the early ages of the world, according to scripture technology, there were no kings, the consequence of which there were no wars. It is the pride of kings which throws mankind into confusion. Immediate necessity makes many things convenient, which if continued would grow into oppressions. Expedience and right are different things. I make the sufferer's case my own. I started crying when I was reading this one earlier to Amy out back. I make the sufferer's case my own, and I protest that were I driven from house and home, and my property destroyed, and my circumstances ruined, that as a man sensible of injuries, I could never relish the doctrine of reconciliation or consider myself bound thereby. A government which cannot preserve the peace is no government at all. And in that case, we pay our money for nothing. Men of passive tempers look somewhat lightly over the offenses of Britain, and still hoping for the best are apt to call out, come, come, shall be friends for all of this. But examine the passions and feelings of mankind. Bring the doctrine of reconciliation to the touchstone of nature, and then tell me whether you can hereafter love, honor, and faithfully serve the power that hath carried fire and sword into your land. If you cannot do all of these, then you are only deceiving yourselves, and by your delay, bringing ruin upon your posterity. Posterity, all future generations of people. There is trouble, let it be in my time with me, so that my children may know peace. So radical thoughts. I'm proud to say, and I'm proud of you for watching, that I had 8 people when I started reading these quotes, watching the show. I had 7 people continuing to watch. I admire you all for your brains. I admire you all for your tenacity of thought, to be willing to be read something that is not the way that we think. We have to dust off our history books. We have to understand who our forefathers were, truly. Because our history books were written by them.
One very interesting quote in there was the one about a government that cannot keep the peace is not a government at all. And I think to just the United States as a whole and what we've been going through the last a lot of years, you have essentially a divide, a racial divide. The government is perpetuating that. I wonder how many people actually feel that racial divide on an individual level. Mm-hmm. And you have this, our country is not in peace. Mm-hmm. Certain parts of the United States are a war zone.
Correct.
And, the government is not doing its job.
No, it is not. No, it's not.
It's very interesting when you think of it that way. So, a lot of people think of peace, they think of automatically of war, and think, well, the United States isn't at war. Is it?
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, we are at war in the sense that we have so many homeless people living on the streets. There's men, women, and children. Mm-hmm. And at what point did that become acceptable?
I heard a debate recently, and I'm not going to say who it was, because I don't really remember, because I watch a lot of information. But somebody was referring to homeless people, and they were basically talking about how they're degenerates, how they're losers and filth, and a lot of them want to be homeless. You and I were homeless as children. Yeah. You and I were homeless as children. We need to remember who it is that we're representing. Mm-hmm. And I think that Thomas Paine makes an excellent case for that in his several works, which I continue to read. I continue to expand my mind, and so that I can bring it to people here. Common Sense by Thomas Paine is, of course, the one that gave birth to the American Revolution. The Age of Reason, which he was arrested 6 hours after completing in France. He called into question the way that the French Revolution was happening and what they were doing. The French lost their minds through the guillotine. They were assigning everyone to the guillotine. And he tells them, I have many good friends that are assigned to the guillotine. What do they say to Thomas Paine? To the guillotine! So Thomas Paine was almost put to death. He cried out to George Washington. George Washington said, I will not intervene. And he called out George Washington in a strongly worded letter to George Washington. So we forget because we don't pay attention. We don't learn. But once people learn, we can't forget it. We can't act like we don't know it.
Once the veil of ignorance is lifted, it's hard to unsee things.
Sure. So The Age of Reason, Agrarian Justice is another fantastic one, which most of these you can find on Audible for free. Rights of Man, which of course I want to explain, also applied to the rights of women. It wasn't just about mankind. It was widely about everyone.
Mankind.
Okay, so that's that with Thomas Paine. I encourage you to watch a biography about him that this British man put together. It was absolutely beautiful. Made me cry like 3 or 4 different times. It's an hour and 19 minutes long. Thank you guys so much for watching the Wednesday Wake Up Live. We are passionate about the show. We're passionate about the revolution of the individual, the revolution of the state. No, I'm just kidding. And we're passionate about our communities. We're passionate about you guys. And I hope that shows every week. So today we talked about the coronavirus updates. We have a friend of ours, of Kate's, that is on a cruise ship off the coast of Japan, where the virus is continuing to spread. 31 new cases a day. 20 new cases a day, and she's stuck there. That's when we started the show about what's happening in Japan, how it's become a ghost town. It's very terrifying. Andrew Yang dropped out of the national debate, out of the national race, but some of his viewpoints are here to stay. We're still talking about UBI. We're still going to be talking about automation and what's that going to be doing to jobs. And then, of course, finally, we talk about Proposition 13. Vote no. Vote no to this Proposition 13. Vote no to the one that they're trying to put back onto the ballot, or that they don't even want to put on the ballot. They just want to shove it down your throat anyway.
They've got 25% of the signatures. When you see the people out there gathering signatures, and they say, well, just put your signature down so you can vote no. Just don't put your signature down.
Yeah.
And it can't go on the ballot.
What a farce. The government is a farce.
They're paying every time somebody puts their signature on one of those pieces of paper, the petitioner gets paid. That's why they want you to put your name down. So just don't put your name down on that one.
We're not here to pretend with you bastards. All right, and then Thomas Paine, the revolutionary mind, the most important brain of the revolution. 6 people attended his funeral. 6. One of them was a woman that he helped free. Her name was Madame Bonneville, a French woman, and her son, who was born here in America. It was a platonic relationship. She stood on the east side of the grave. She told her son to stand on the west side of the grave. And she said, behold, a grateful nation. 6 people. 2 of them were black. Another one foreign born. 1 American citizen at his funeral. And she said, behold what gratitude of the nations looks like. She says, my son stands there for the gratitude of this nation, America, and I stand here for the gratitude of France. Thomas Paine. Shout out to Jessica, who's fighting that short-term rental fight. They're coming after Murrieta now.
Tuesday at 3:45 is the meeting with Murrieta to fight the short-term rental ban, or to express your opinion about the short-term rental ban.
Oh, really?
Yes, Murrieta City Council is meeting.
When?
Tuesday at 3:45 p.m.
Tuesday at 3:45 p.m., huh?
So they moved it up earlier, which means I can attend.
Interesting.
Thank you.
So that's in what, 5 days from now? 6 days from now. 6 days from now. Interesting. You want to fight the fight? No, I'm just kidding.
Wear a red shirt.
Wear a red shirt. So red is the color of the short-term rental ban?
Yes. That's the supporters. They all wear red.
Interesting. Let freedom
red.
ring.
Red like the blood of tyrants.
Red like the blood of tyrants. There he is. There's my best friend of 27, 28 years. All right. We're getting hit with the last couple of questions. Sign for short-term rentals. Hey, what happened to the audio? Did the audio lose? Okay. David, how are you? Hello, Julie. Okay, I'm good. We're just wreaking havoc and running 7 minutes over. Wear red. If you want to stick it to the government in Murrieta and in Temecula, wear red. You're going to need to remind me what that time is again for that, because I am basically a hobbit. I enjoy the Shire. I don't like to leave the Shire, but every once in a while I have to go out and represent. Am I late for the couch auction? We're getting a lot of comments all of a sudden. Anyone else having trouble with it? It might just be you, Austin. It just might be you. Okay, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Jessica says she can hear. Watch the show from the beginning. We participated in a whole bunch of savagery and barbarianism. The show is picking up in viewership right here at the end. We had over 1,000 live views last week. Over 1,000 live views. It's a lot of fun. What color? Okay, things are happening. All right, here we go. We love you all. Thank you guys so much for tuning. We're actually 8 minutes over at this point, so we're going to cut the show right now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Watch it from the beginning. Listen to it while you're in your car. Listen to it while you're, washing dishes or wrestling with your children. It's just all the good stuff. And wear red, you savages.
On YouTube, Austin, the subtitles, we can put them on YouTube.
All right.
Love you guys.
Peace.